Buenos días, mis amigos. Lo siento que no estuve a la semana pasada, pero aquí estoy hoy y qué gusto verlos. Ahora vamos a comenzar con el saludo a la bandera, por acaso que es su primera actividad del día. Todos de pie, por favor. ¿Listos? 1, 2, 3. Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa, una nación bajo Dios indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Muy bien. Ok, amigos, vamos a tener dos cosas hoy. Primero, tengo un poema en español que a mí me gusta. Y después, tengo un cuento en inglés. Era uno de mis cuentos favoritos cuando era niña. Es largo. Voy a leer un poco cada día. Creo que voy a poner más que un video esta semana y pueden escuchar cuando quieran. Primero, vamos a comenzar. Tengo este libro. Es bilingüe, pero voy a leer las versiones en español. Se llama Jitomates Risueños y otros poemas de primavera. Risueños. ¿Qué quiere decir risueños? Risueños quiere decir que está riéndose. Risueños. Los tomates están riéndose. Ok. Escogí ¿dónde está? El poema que se llama, ¿dónde está? Perdón. Aquí está. Las palabras son pájaros. Puedes ver, hay dibujos muy detallados. Las palabras son pájaros. Ok, aquí está. Las palabras son pájaros que llegan con los libros y la primavera. Okay. Pájaros son birds, ¿verdad? Palabras son words. A las palabras les gustan las nubes, el viento, los árboles. Hay palabras mensajeras que vienen de lejos de otras tierras. Para estas no existen fronteras, sino estrellas, luna y sol. Hay palabras familiares como canarios y exóticas como el quetzal. Palabras como canarios. ¿Sabes qué es un canario? Canario, sí. Y quetzal. Quetzal es un otro tipo de pájaro. Unas resisten el frío, otras se van con el sol hacia el sur. Hay palabras que se mueren enjauladas, difíciles de traducir. Y otros hacen nido. Aquí está. Este es un nido. Palabras que hacen nido, tienen crías, les dan calor, alimento. Les enseñan a volar y un día se marchan en parvadas. Las letras en la página son las huellas que dejan junto al mar. A mí me gusta. Están comparando, pensando en palabras y luego comparándolas a pájaros. Si buscas en el internet, yo sé que puede encontrar este poema. Se llama, otra vez, Las palabras son pájaros. Muy bien. Por Francisco Alarcón. Muy bien. Ok, ahora remotos. Click. All right. So, one of the standards for first grade is that we read fairy tales, legends, fables, that sort of thing. So for this week, I have this book collection of fairy tales, the world's best fairy tales. Now these are fairy tales, primarily European fairy tales. I don't know if you guys remember, we talked about where Europe is. It's across the ocean. So the majority of these tales came from countries in Europe. So the one that I'm going to read to you, or start to read today, is called The Snow Queen. And it's super famous. And, shoot, it's not telling me. I'm pretty sure the author is Hans Christian Andersen, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to have to check on that for you guys, because I don't think it's telling me here. But let me double check because I don't want to give you the wrong information. So I'm just going to read. We're going to do it in installments, okay? There's not a lot of pictures, so you're going to have to really listen. I think I'll just read 3 pages today, okay? And there was a movie of the Snow Queen. But movies, as you know, can often be very different from the actual story. All right, here we go. There once was a dreadfully wicked hobgoblin. One day he was in high good spirits because he had made a mirror which reflected everything that was good and beautiful in such a way that it dwindled almost to nothing. But anything that was bad and ugly stood out very clearly and appeared much worse. The most beautiful landscape looked like boiled spinach. The nicest people looked repulsive, or seemed to stand on their heads, or had no middles, and their faces were so distorted that they could not be recognized. And if anyone had a single freckle, you might be sure it would look like as if it had spread over his whole nose and mouth. That's the funniest thing about it, thought the hobgoblin. So a hobgoblin is like a goblin, kind of like a nasty little creature that has magical powers, but he or she's not a nice magical person. Okay, so he made this mirror to make everything that's bad look even worse than it was. One day, the hobgoblin was flying high among the clouds, maliciously flashing his mirror on the countries below. The mirror that makes everything look bad. Suddenly, it slipped from his hands and crashed to the earth, shattered into millions and billions of pieces. And now came the greatest mischief of all, for most of the pieces were hardly as large as a grain of sand, and they flew about all over the world. If anyone got a speck of the mirror in his eye, there it stayed. From then on, he would see everything crooked, or else could see only the ugly side of things, for every tiny splinter of the glass possessed the same power as the whole mirror. Some people got a splinter in their hearts, and that was dreadful, for then the heart would turn into a lump of ice. A few of the fragments were large enough to be used as window panes, but how terrible it would be to look at one's friends and neighbors through such a window. The hobgoblin was so pleased he laughed till his sides ached as the tiny bits of glass continued to whirl about in the air. And now you will hear what happened. Okay, this is the first section. I'm just going to read one little part more. The first part is about, it says, a little boy and a little girl. In a large town where there were so many people and houses that there were not enough room for everybody to have a garden, lived two poor children. They were not brother and sister, but they loved each other just as much as if they were. Their parents lived opposite one another in two attics. Okay, so they lived up on the top floor of houses in a small area of the house, and each family had planted a rose tree and sweet peas, those are beautiful smelling flowers, in a window box. So a little planter that you hang outside your window. You don't see those as much here, but they have those. And then it grows outside your window. In summer, the two children were allowed to sit out underneath the rose trees and play lovely games together all afternoon. In the winter, they could not do this. So they heated pennies on the stove and put them against the frozen window panes. These made perfect peepholes through which they could gaze at each other across the frozen gutters. His name was Kay, and hers was Gerda. One day it was snowing very hard. "Those are the white bees swarming," said the old grandmother. "Have they got a queen bee too?" asked the little boy, for he knew about the real bees have one. "To be sure," said the grandmother. "She flies wherever they swarm the thickest. She is the snow queen and is the biggest of them all. She never remains still upon the earth, but always returns to the black clouds. Often at midnight she flies through the streets of the town and peeps in at all the windows, and then the snowflakes freeze in pretty patterns and look like flowers." "Yes, we have seen that," said both children. They knew that it was true. "Can the Snow Queen come in here?" asked the little girl. "Just let her," cried the boy. "I would put her on the stove and melt her." But the grandmother stroked his hair and told some more stories. That evening, when little Kay was going to bed, he jumped on the chair by the window and peeped through the little hole. A few snowflakes were falling, and one of them, the largest, lay on the edge of one of the window boxes. The snowflake grew larger and larger till it took the form of a maiden. A maiden means a young girl, young woman, dressed in finest white gauze. Gauze is a fabric that's very flowy and kind of see-through-ish. She was so beautiful and delicate, but all ice, hard, glittering ice. She nodded at the window and beckoned to Kay with her hand. The little boy was frightened at the sight of her and sprang down from the chair. Suddenly it seemed as if a great white bird had flown past the window. The next day the weather cleared, and not long after a thaw set in and spring appeared. With the warm spring sunshine, the countryside turned a soft green. The swallows worked busily on their nests, and Kay and Gerda played together once more in their little garden high on the rooftop. They knew that summer had come at last, when their little rose trees burst into glorious bloom. One day the children were looking at a picture book. The clock in the great church tower had just struck 5 when Kay suddenly exclaimed, "Oh, something has stung my heart, and now I've got something in my eye." Gerda threw her arms around his neck. He blinked his eyes again and again, but no, she could see nothing in them. I think it is gone now," said he, but it had not gone. It was one of the tiny splinters from the magic mirror we have heard about, the mirror that turned whatever was fine and good, reflected in it, into something small and ugly. And a splinter had found its way to poor Kay's heart, which began to change into a lump of ice. His heart did not hurt at all, but The splinter was still there. "Why are you crying?" he asked Gerda. "It makes you look so ugly." "There's nothing the matter with me. Just look. That rose is all worm-eaten, and this one is stunted. What ugly roses they are!" And he began to pull them to pieces. "Kay, what are you doing?" cried the little girl, and she threw up her hands. And when he saw how frightened she was, he pulled off another rose and ran inside to his window, away from the dear little Gerda. I'm going to pause there. Uh-oh. So now we've been introduced to our characters. We have met the grandmother. We have met the boy Kay, the girl Gerda. And we have been given the problem in our story. So we have our setting. Okay, it's in right now. It's in the attic of the house of the children. Even though they don't live together, it sounds like they're in Kay's house. And we have the characters. So far we've got Kay and Gerda and the grandmother and the Snow Queen. We had the hobgoblin, but I have a feeling he's not going to be a big part. And then the problem in the story right now we're finding out is this piece of mirror that went into Kay's heart and into his eye. All right, I'll read some more next time. Be thinking, what do you think's going to happen next? Make a prediction. You can just make the prediction in your head and see if it comes true when we read tomorrow. Or if you want to, you could send me a message. You could send it on Class Dojo, or you could send it on Google Classroom. What do you think is going to happen next? You guys have a great